Because it's Thursday, that means we head all the way down to Cheyenne, Wyoming, where waiting by is Charles Katibi, who has the longest paperclip chain of any office in Cheyenne, Wyoming. About how long has that thing gotten to at this point? Calling Guinness's World Book yet?
I wasn't aware that I was in the running, actually, but I appreciate this publicity.
Yeah, no, it was actually, the last time I used that as a joke, Governor Friedenthal called the show. And it was just a call out of the blue. You know, he was finishing up his last 2 weeks in office. And I asked him, I said, the legislators are not in session. You're pretty much all alone for the next 2 weeks inside the Capitol building. How long is that paperclip chain? You know,
I like to think I have better things to do with my time than Governor Friedenthal.
Okay. Well, like, for example, taking a look at, but we have to do this before, I don't like polls, but we're about to take a look at a poll.
Okay.
All right. Now, the reason I don't like polls is just how often polls are just absolutely wrong, or sometimes they have very good questions, though, but the whole premise of the thing is wrong. So rather than covering polls here, what I do is I get a hold of Tim from Tampa, and he gives us an in-depth look at the polls. So, ladies and gentlemen, right now, Tim from Tampa. How you doing, Tim?
So how did the Germans conquer Poland so fast?
I have no idea how.
They marched in backwards, and the Polish thought they were leaving.
Oh, there you go. That's Tim from Tampa. That's how we roll around here. We just tell a Polish joke and move on. So you have an actual look at a poll, though, dealing with what?
Yeah, this is a real poll, not, But, so this poll was conducted by the University of Wyoming, and it was basically and this was a poll about how people felt about the budget that was passed in March by the legislature. And what they said was, and what they concluded is that a majority of people in this poll, about 52%, would have preferred if the legislature had added Medicaid expansion onto the budget. They would have preferred it more than the actual budget, which only got about 40% of support. And what they were saying is, if we had expanded Medicaid, a majority of Wyomingites, according to this poll, which is only a little over 300 people actually.
Oh, okay, wait. See, we can stop right there.
Sure.
I know Wyoming does not have a whole lot of people in its population, but 300 people?
We have more than 300 people. That is correct,
yeah.
Glenn. And supposedly they got people from all 23 counties, and they said that, and based on how they phrased the questions, they said that they would have preferred if Medicaid was expanded.
Yeah.
The trick was they framed the question as, knowing that Wyoming would save money if you expanded Medicaid, would you support Medicaid expansion?
Okay, well, there you go right there. Knowing the state would save money, this is part of the reason you see why we tell Polish jokes instead of actually look at polls.
Yeah, they're a lot more serious.
Yeah.
So and if you're a layman, you haven't been following this like you and me, you would think, yeah, sure, why wouldn't we expand Medicaid? We could we wouldn't have to cut as much from education or highway spending, which is what we're going to have to do because the money just isn't there.
Right.
The problem is that it's completely false. The numbers that they're going off of, they said we would save about $33 million. They're taking those numbers, they're citing those numbers from Governor Meade's budget request, which was handily rejected outright, completely, by the Appropriations Committee, because those numbers are completely false. Wyoming would not have saved any money if we had expanded Medicaid.
Well, let me ask you again. You probably said this, but I'm afraid I might have missed it. Who did this poll?
This is from the University of Wyoming's Center for Energy Economics and Public Policy.
Okay. Now, would I be wrong in saying that the group from the University of Wyoming that you just mentioned are they're going to be voting Democrat this next election?
Well, I mean, it's hard to say. They do benefit a lot from a lot of public funding, and they are supporting a lot of public programs. So who knows where they're going to be, where their political allegiance is.
Okay, I'll take that bullet instead of you. I think this is a poll put on by a bunch of Democrats. That's what it sounds like to me. By the way that they framed the question, it sounds to me like they were looking for a certain result.
Absolutely. If you think that if you're told that Wyoming would save money for Medicaid expansion, why wouldn't you? The problem is that it's completely ridiculous. The idea that you would actually save money is based on a theory that Governor Meade had, and he tried to peddle to legislators. And that theory is that if you expanded Medicaid, we'd be able to save a lot on a lot of state programs, state health care programs that we're currently spending on. And one of those is called Title 25. Now, that's a program where if someone has substance abuse or mental health issues and they're deemed to be a threat to themselves or others, they are forcibly hospitalized at mental health facilities around the state.
Right.
Now, the reason why Medicaid would not have saved this program any money is that by law, you cannot spend Medicaid on mental health services at mental health facilities. There was actually a federal prohibition on this. It's called the Institute for Mental Disease Exclusion. And this has been around since Medicaid was founded. And the reason why was because federal lawmakers in Congress, they did not want state lawmakers to outsource responsibility for caring for the mentally ill. They did not want them to offload those costs onto the federal government. But that's what Meade was claiming. And thankfully, our lawmakers didn't bite, and they rejected that proposal.
Did anyone bother to point out to the governor that this can't be done?
It was pointed out to the Department of Health's director, who was saying the same line. And they were asked. A lot of them were asking, where will these savings come from? And he changed his tact, and his message got a lot more nuanced, yet still incorrect. And what he said was that if you expand Medicaid, then these people will be able to get their some primary care and mental health services, outpatient services, before they are forcibly hospitalized. They'll be able to get the care they need before they go into critical condition. The problem is, with that one as well, is that that's also wrong. And the reason why is because they don't even have any idea if they would even be eligible for this. They don't actually contact a lot of people at the Department of Health to see if there was any information about if the people currently going through Title 25 would be eligible for Medicaid. But they have no information on their income levels. So a lot of people might be above those income levels. A lot of people might be below those, might already be eligible for our current Medicaid system. And what that shows is that Medicaid is a terrible program for actually reaching out to people in need.
Okay. There is, I think, a problem that polls will come out like this, and I've also ripped apart different studies that have come out of different universities, including our own university here in Wyoming. The problem is they're constantly doing polls and studies like this, and then they get press. And you know it's wrong. I know it's wrong because you and I pay attention to a lot of the details.
Yeah.
I would love some organization, I can't imagine maybe some libertarian-ish think tank down in Cheyenne, I'm not mentioning names, that would occasionally do a poll, but a real one, and use it for publicity.
We're actually thinking of conducting a poll ourselves.
Okay.
And to actually get a real, true gauge about not just Medicaid, but how people feel about the budget as well.
Right.
And one thing we're trying to use that to try something out on is to try and get legislators to sign a pledge. We're in a really big budget crisis right now, and what we wanted to have them do is sign a pledge that says no matter what, they are going to vow to their constituents that they will not raise taxes under any circumstances. It's a very tempting offer to say, why go into the budget and make these hard decisions deciding whose benefits and goodies to cut when you can just always take more money from the taxpayer? And we're saying that is not sustainable and it's not fair.
You know, it's just tossing this out there as a thought.
Sure.
It's really good to have a pledge like that during an election year. Mm-hmm. I mean,
right.
To make that as public as you possibly can is a great idea.
Yeah, because during the election season, they're talking to their constituents, and they want to make the best impression.
Right.
And the best impression you can make is that I'm going to represent you and your interests. And the best interest for a taxpayer is you're not going to take more of their money through taxes.
Right.
And you're going to deliver them better value
Right.
by being able to deliver better services cheaper. But what happens all too often is that once the election's over and they actually get into those rooms where they actually have to make these tough decisions, they put the taxpayer on the back burner and they raise their taxes, and they don't actually make any of those hard decisions.
Well, just so you know, I am always for public embarrassment and shaming of politicians. I have finally put away public flogging, but I am still for tarring and feathering whenever that might be necessary, just so you know. You've written extensively about this kind of stuff. Where do people find your work?
They can go to wyliberty.org.
Okay. Thank you very much for coming on, Charles. I appreciate it.